Morning, everybody, and welcome to another webinar from TESOL-SPAIN. I think this is our 10th or 11th. I've kind of lost count now. And we're really, really happy this morning to be able to welcome Mena Dobson, all the way from Cordoba, very far away, who's going to be doing a Christmas craft selection box. Julia's a pre-primary and lower primary teacher, but she's also an excellent artist. So I'm really excited to see the kinds of things that she's going to tell us about today, things that we can do with the younger kids in class. Okay, lovely for you to join us today, Julia. Thank you very much. And
thank you. Oh, hello. I can no longer see Amanda. I've been left alone now. Well, just to tell you a little bit about myself. Well, obviously my name is Julia. Hello. I live in Cordoba. I've been teaching for about 5 years now. And I mainly teach pre-primary and some classes of lower primary. And I studied fine arts at university and obviously found out that I wasn't going to be a famous artist living in New York selling my art for millions. So I decided to get into teaching. And I had the opportunity in my current school, York TEFL, to develop my own materials and kind of started getting interested in how children develop and how they develop the fine motor skills, which is really important for them later on in life, just getting dressed or writing, for example. So they need to practice all these little exercises to strengthen their hand muscles. And yeah, I think, shall we get started? Oh, and could you tell me just briefly what ages do you teach, more or less? Six and 7. Primary 1st to 6. Wow. Woof, you've got a big range, Ursula. 3 to 15, my gosh. I can't seem to read all of the things on the chat for some reason. Do you know where that is? Oops. Sorry, I'm still having some issues with the...
do you want some help? What is it you can't see?
I can't see the whole chat box, so I can only see half of what people are saying. Oh, okay, I'm not teaching right now, but I'm a trainer and an author. Oh, gosh, I hope I can show you something new. Anyway, well, could you pass to the next? Thank you, Mandy. The reason why I'm doing this mainly is the crafts that I've chosen are all generally to develop all these fine motor skills, which are basically strengthening the hand muscles and helping them to produce these little small movements like the tripod that they need for writing and unbuttoning their clothes and things like that. Then also I've decided to go with Christmas cards because they're really cheap to make. Sometimes when you do these arts and crafts, you spend a whole load of money on materials and then at the end they just get back home and they get chucked after like 2 days. Or totally broken by the children, depends on what ages. So then normally I've tended to find things that are very easy to find, materials, and especially cheap. They're practically all done with paper. Also, I've gone for the Christmas card format because they're very good for fast finishers. If you've got one of the little ones that just suddenly finishes in like 2 minutes, they can draw things at the back or colour some writing, some letters, or you've got plenty of possibilities. Also, they're pretty simple and quite orientated to their age. So it shouldn't be too much stress for the last class. You know, the last classes are all a bit woo. So at least you should be able to have quite a stress-free last class for the end of term. And they all should take about 15 to 20 minutes. So if you're in an academy, it's more or less the time that I would leave for any activity. So they're quite easy. Yeah, oh, sorry, just to say from before, the structure of the talk, sorry. The structure of the talk is going to be, we're going to go through each age. So we're going to talk about 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and 7 and over. I've put them all together because they normally have their fine motor skills quite developed. So you can more or less do something for all above 7 without much problem. And then once we talk about the fine motor of each of them, we'll talk how to make these crafts. These are the ones that we're going to be using in the first part of the session. And could you tell me which ages you think that these Christmas cards correspond to? So if they're 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds or over? Let me see. Each of these cards are made for one specific age. So one of them is 3-year-olds. For example, the one that says love, what age do you think that could be? Just to say, these cards have been done by me, so you won't expect these results from a 3-year-old, obviously. Everyone's saying 6 to 7. 5-year-olds. So, yeah, they haven't been done by the 3-year-olds, no. They're all done by me, so obviously the... and they don't have much preparation from the teacher, but they obviously need a little bit of preparation. So what about the snowman? What age do you think the snowman could be? Six, maybe 3 or 4, okay. 5-year-old. And the reindeer? Okay, and what about the Christmas tree? It's made with straws. Seven. Okay. 3-year-olds for the Christmas tree. Okay, and the one that has like various trees with a blue background? Okay, well, shall we have a look? 9, my gosh. Okay. Okay, perfect. So shall we, I'll be showing you the crafts through ages. So first we'll talk about 3-year-olds, then 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, etc. Mandy, could you pass to the next slide, please? Thanks. Oh, can't see this. Okay. So these are the fine motor skills that 3-year-old is supposed to be able to do. This is following the Australian curriculum, so it's sometimes a bit optimistic. So, well, you know, with the plasticine and stuff like that, it's quite difficult for them because they don't have the strength in their hands to make little detailed things or even press it too hard. So they'll tend to go like that and create snakes. And also sometimes they'll hit it like that to make like these cookies, is what it's called here. And from that, then later on they'll develop a bit more. But at the moment, they can mainly just do snakes. Also, they can use their non-dominant hand to assist and stabilize, which means that if you give them scissors, they can hold the piece of paper and the scissors, but it's still quite a difficult task for them to use both hands in coordination. But most importantly, they don't really know what hand is their dominant hand. They're still, some of them have it very clear and some of them are still a bit lost. So if you give them scissors, a lot of times you need to find out which hand they're going to use, because they'll tend to just put it in any hand. They get a bit confused with that. They can also snip paper. So if you give them scissors, they can do very short cuts, like, oh, and that's it. You can't expect them to do long lines unless you do a lot of training with them. They can also trace. So that means they're already holding the pencil properly. So they're doing the tripod, but they're still a lot of times using the rest of the fingers to hold it, which makes it obviously more difficult. And they're using the whole arm. They're not just using wrist. Well, threading beads, but they're normally very big beads. They can't do little ones, and sometimes they'll tend to eat them. So careful with the beads. And they can twist. So there's certain movements that they can already start doing, which is quite difficult because this is bilateral coordination. So it's very difficult to get those two parts of the brain in movement to do an opposite movement. So the Christmas card I've chosen for this is very simple. I think everyone's done them, which is finger paint. Finger paint is something they do a lot at schools, so they're quite used to using paint in the school itself. So for us, it's a lot easier if you're teaching in an academy, because they already know more or less what they've got to do. So here, in this case, I have done this photocopy, so I obviously wrote love myself. I didn't get them to write that, of course. And all these cards have, see, they're all double-sided copies, which means that inside, I normally write a message for the parents, just so that there's something else for the parents. And here they normally tend to, the girls will draw loads of hearts on them. And the children would they would tend to, if they finish quickly, they can use all this to draw something for their parents or for granny and granddad or whoever they want to do it, which is quite useful because some of the kids are going to spend ages on this, but some of them aren't. Some of them are just going to go, and that's it. So that's why I decided Christmas cards. I've already said that before, but. And could you pass the page just so that you can see the materials? So this is a double page. I normally use normal paper, A4, fold it in half, and then you've got 2 Christmas cards in 1 piece of paper, which makes it a lot cheaper and easier to handle for the kids. If they've got lots of paper, they find it a bit overwhelming. And in this case, I think the most important thing is to not put the whole paint tube, because with this, they're going to put their finger in and they'll get their whole finger covered in paint. As if you only put the lid, there's less danger of paint all over the place, if you see what I mean. I think that's, personally, I find that very useful. There's some people that use paper plates and they put a little bit of paint. And then another thing that I find fundamental is explaining all the cleaning process. So here I put baby wipes, because if you, well, we'll talk about this in a minute, but once they use their fingers to paint, if you tell them to clean, there's less danger of it getting all over their clothes or in their friend's face and things like that. And what else? Oh, could you going on to the next slide. Thanks. Well, demonstration is key. With very young ages, I think they really need to know very clearly what the intention is, what they have to do, and how they have to do it. So I would explain, I would show them this without any paint. I would always start off with a blank piece of paper, so you'd only have the love writing. Once you've got that, you show them the paint, show them how to put their finger, and if you can get everybody to put their finger up like that, and that you see they're not doing this or that, just with one finger, put it in the paint, and then show them, boop, boop. Sounds normally tend to help because it makes it more fun for them, or at least they remember it better. So boop, boop. You do a couple and then just let them continue. I think it's fundamental that, we'll talk about this later as well, but that you let them be creative, because they're not all going to do it on the black dots. That some of them are going to do it here, some of them are going to do it in the middle. It doesn't really matter. Some of them are going to open it and do it in the inside. But I think it's fundamental that we let them do their own thing. So I would tend not to show a finalized product unless it's completely necessary. And of course, once you've done the demonstration with boop, 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 take a baby wipe, clean, and throw it away. And another thing is the drills. We were talking about drills last night, I think. And drills are fundamental, in my opinion, because once you've got paint, you go, no. Run around, no. Clean, yes. Clean, yes. So they'll normally tend to not do what you've told them is bad. Sometimes, not always, but they should. Okay, shall we go on to the 4-year-olds and see? Yeah, so 4-year-olds, they're a difficult age because they're kind of in the middle. Some of them have still not quite developed to what here it says the 4-year-old should do, and some of them are really advanced, so they're closer to the 5-year-old. Also, we have to consider that at least in Spain, not everywhere in England it's different. We have 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in one same group, because the ones that are born in December are still 2, and the ones that are born in in June would be 5. So it's quite difficult because you've got a lot of different stages of development in one class. And 4-year-olds especially kind of in the middle. They're still, well, as I was saying before, they're in between stages of development. So a 4-year-old normally would cut on a line, so a straight line. Not too long, they still do shortcuts. They're not going to cut a whole page in half, but they can do a piece of it. They can tend to write their names, but some of them write it backwards as if it was mirrored. They can copy numbers, but this is, remember, copy. They don't know what direction 5 goes in, or 3, or 6. They'll normally copy them, but they can't really produce them by themselves. They clearly know what hand is their dominant hand, and they can use the tripod. They can do correct pencil grasping. Again, they colour with no problem, and they can colour an entire picture, which a 3-year-old, they just get a bit overwhelmed by all this white piece of paper and they just stop colouring. They can trace very well. They can trace over hand shapes and things like that. And the most important thing here is that they can draw independently, and they're starting to be really creative. So they can produce whole drawings from their imagination and not necessarily be influenced by other things. So they can show shapes and stick figures and, well, all that kind of stuff, and use their colours as they want. So the Christmas card I've decided to choose, I did last year with my students, and it's a snowman. So this is actually a very simple activity. Sorry. All you need is cotton wool. You know these ones that are used to get rid of your makeup? The flat ones. And the only thing they have to do is stick it on a piece of paper. Just with two, they stick them on with normal glue. They don't need anything. And then the rest is whatever they want to do. You can show them the final product so that they put a hat on and do snow in the background or not. So you just kind of, the rest is just drawing. It's colouring whatever they want. And here they can be really creative. They can do whatever they want with it. Some of them will draw flowers. It won't be winter, it'll be spring, but it's the same thing. There will always be a snowman. And the materials that you need for this are on the next slide. Mandy, thank you. Well, I put pencils because that's what I use, but normally you'd give them crayons. Normal Pritt Stick glue, so you don't need any glue training previously or anything like that. And you will need felt tips for the actual cotton wool colouring. So if they're going to do eyes on the cotton wool, it will have to be felt tip pens. But they'll be super excited about using them, and they'll be really responsible with them, or at least they normally will be. And again, it's the same thing, a whole A4, cut in half, folded, and you just need to give them a white piece of paper because the rest they'll do on their own. If you want to write a message inside it or something like that, see, just give them, that's half an A4. Folded, you'll have to fold it yourself. And just let them do their own thing, really. Anything else here? No. Oh, yes. So for me, it's very important to encourage children's creativity. I think it broadens their mind in every single sense, or at least for me, it's fundamental. I don't know if you do any activities to encourage creativity in class? Like, for example, I'd never show them a finalized product, and if I do, I'll try to show them the best. Yeah, exactly. But and what kind of thing would you do, Amanda? If this, for example, I would show them it finalized, and I'd try to show them the best I could so that they can do the best that they can possibly do. But I tend to show them things, I tend to show them the process, as I was saying before, the demonstration, rather than showing them a finished card. Because I think that way you just let them do their own thing. If they want it to be spring, it can be spring. If they want there to be presents, there can be presents. They can do anything they want. Last week we read a story. This is how to encourage creativity. Amanda's saying that last week they read a story and they had to draw what they thought happened at the end. That's beautiful. It's a lovely activity. Oh, not when you want it to be a gift. Yeah, I guess that's true, but I think sometimes parents don't really care about all these gift things and stuff like that. They just like seeing what the children can produce. At least I do have a very good relationship with the mothers, and they just know that children can come up with whatever they want, really. But yes, true. If it's a gift, I guess. Any other? Wait, what's this time? Oh, okay. Right. Well, shall we go on to the 5-year-olds? Thank you. Well, 5-year-olds obviously are nearly, well, they're about to get to primary, so they're much more advanced in their fine motor skills. You can see them writing properly and picking up the pencil with absolutely no problem. They can cut out simple shapes. Obviously, I would insist in scissor training. Not every school practices scissors with the children, so sometimes they're 5 or 6 and they really don't know how to use scissors. Because if they don't do it at school and they don't do it at their house, it's difficult. So I think it's fundamental, if you are going to use scissors, to see what they can actually do before you just suddenly give them some activity with scissors. And I think you need to assess what the students can do before you give them the scissors, because you could be surprised. But anyway, they can cut simple shapes, they can do very long cuts and zigzags as well, and kind of circular, but they can't get to the circle yet. They can copy triangles and basic shapes. They can colour within the lines, obviously. At 5, they get quite obsessional with their colouring. They like to have it all finished and pretty. Not as much as the 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds don't really care about the result. 5-year-olds are very focused on finishing and making it look nice. Again, as I was saying before, they've got a perfect grasp at this point. Not all of them, of course, there's always exceptions. As we said, you've got 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and possibly 6-year-olds at the end of the year in class. So each of them is going to have a different development stage. But they don't quite move the wrist yet. And they can glue and paste appropriately. Draw, they're quite good at drawing at this point. They've already practiced quite a lot. And they can use paint, pencils, crayons, etc. Anything that involves a tripod grasp is much easier for them. So, yeah. Okay, this is actually a very difficult craft. It looks very simple, but it's not. The scissor skills are very simple, truly, because a 3-year-old could do this. It's actually very good to practice. If you're going to do scissors with your 3-year-olds, it's very easy. It's a very short cut. It's just one, boop, boop. That's it. There's no more to it. It's one cut. Very simple. The problem comes when it comes to measuring, because they're going to tend to just go, pick up the straw and go. So you'll end up with a whole load of different sizes. So once you've got that, having to order that in different sizes is not that easy for them. Oh, thank you, Amanda. So actually having to cut them and then order them to turn into a triangle is quite a task. So one of the things that I was going to say, well, I'll talk about this in a minute. Yeah, so here all you need is, again, the basic piece of paper that we were talking about before. I don't know where it is. Here. Again, A4, cut in half, folded for the 5-year-olds. I would tend to fold them always, unless we're going into primary. But for pre-primary, I would always tend to fold them, because if not, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Here you just need some straws. And the task about this, the difficulty also, is glue. You can't use Prick Stick for this activity. You need proper white glue. For this, I would tend to do a training before I give them this glue, because if not, they're going to go, and that is going to be absolute disaster. So, well, I'll be talking about all this scissor skills and glue and stuff like that in TESOL Spain if anyone's coming, because I don't have time to explain everything right now. So I would tend to give them a training, which is just showing them how to do it very slowly and doing one drop at a time, so So here what they'd have to do is a straight line, which is much more difficult than just a drop. They can also do drops for each individual straw. And you'll need to leave a little bit of time for drying. So if you can do it a little bit earlier than perhaps you'd normally do your activities, let them dry a little bit. It's not long, it's just about 5 minutes, but you need to consider that, because if not, you're going to have straws falling all over the place and they're going to get upset because they don't have it perfect to show for their parents. Also with the glue, I would say that it's fundamental to have toilet paper, because once they have used it, you have a bit of glue left over, and that tends to fall over and get all over the place. So if when you demonstrate, you show them that they have to clean the glue once they've finished, you'll avoid some future problems. And also if they do get glue on their hands, again, I think baby wipes are very useful in a pre-primary class. So anytime that you've got baby wipes and they get dirty, they can just go and clean themselves, and tell them to throw it in the bin. And, oh, and the stars. I think anything that goes with golden stars is positive. I've got a roll, enormous roll. I use it all the time because they do go a bit crazy about the golden stars. So I think that's always positive. And then what was I going to say? Oh, here. And this activity especially, Mandy, could you pass the slide? Thanks. This activity especially is quite good for collaborating. So you could get 5-year-olds working with 3-year-olds. The 3-year-olds could do the cutting, and the 5-year-olds could do the measuring and putting them into the shape. Or even with older kids, with primary and pre-primary, perhaps you could get the 6-year-olds helping the younger ones and things like that. So it's very good if you ever, do you ever put various groups together or work with other teachers? I don't know if, yes, well, in special classes now? A4. And what kind of ages would you tend to put together? Because, for example, in the special classes, Halloween, Christmas, Easter, I always get the other teachers come into my class, so we do the classes together. Oh, you don't mix levels? Well, it's a possibility if you do put together various levels. This kind of activity is very useful because they can do different things and help each other. And produce, perhaps you could do it bigger scale so that they have it in the classroom with various different things. Like instead of using straws, you could use spaghettis or something like that. And they can do it all together. Anyone else that works together? I don't seem to. Well, exactly, any levels of primary yet? Well, perhaps something a bit harder for primary, but this is also, for measuring, it's quite good. And also if you're with older groups, instead of telling them to just cut the scissors crazy, cut the straws, they can actually put them, measure them, draw a line, cut them properly so they make a more precise triangle. Well, like, for example, with the 5- and 6-year-olds, it would be perfect. So you can, well, we'll talk about this later as well, but you can adapt things to the level so that it's a bit harder or easier depending on what your groups are, of course. Well, should we continue on to the 6-year-olds, for example? Yeah, cool. Well, 6-year-olds, a completely different level. They are starting to learn to read, to write properly. They can form most letters. Sometimes they confuse them and they put them mirrored, but they don't normally, they tend to be quite good. They write consistently aligned, sometimes with a bit of guidance, especially at the beginning of the year. Because, of course, if you have any group at the beginning of the year aren't going to have the same tasks as they will at the end of the year. So that's why I've chosen quite simple crafts to begin with, because I think they find it harder at the beginning. They're still developing and adapting to having, well, to being in a class. They can use pencil with no problem. Some of them still have, at the beginning of the year, they still have the, well, different things they put on the pencils to help them with the tripod grasp, but generally they don't have problems. And they can cut around shapes. The circle is the most difficult shape to cut out of all of them. So when you put a circular shape with other objects and with other shapes, it becomes even more complicated because they have to put in practice the bilateral coordination. It just complicates incredibly the whole thing. So in 6-year-olds, you can more or less expect them to cut everything. Not neatly, but they can more or less cut everything. And they can obviously draw very well. They can draw recognizable objects and have a lot of detail in their pictures. And they can fold paper. So this, for example, that we had before, that we were talking about always giving them the folded Christmas card here, they could fold themselves because they can. Perhaps it's not precise, but you'd have a more or less, they might fold it like that, but you'll more or less get the result. So they can fold. And they can cut and paste and glue and all that without a problem. So the Christmas card I've chosen is the reindeer. In this case, you can tell them to fold a piece of paper. You can give them the reindeer shape so that they cut it out. They do have the possibility of cutting at this age, or you can get them to trace it and then copy it, or you can get them to draw it and then cut it, or whatever you consider that your students are able to do. And the actual complication with this comes with the antlers, because these are pipe cleaners. You can find these more or less anywhere. They're pretty simple to find. And you've got different colours. These are Christmas ones, so they're kind of shiny. They look a bit like tinsel. But these are very flexible and moldable. You can do whatever you want. You can cut them easily with a pair of scissors as well. So you can get one and cut it in pieces, which is also helpful. But this of actually folding and twisting and then gluing is quite a difficult task for younger ones. So anything that involves very small hand movements is quite difficult. Some of the kids, they shouldn't with 6, they shouldn't need assistance, but you can always get children that need a bit of extra help. At least it won't be the majority of the class. And then this one as well, can we pass on to the next slide? Yeah, this one you also need glue. You need prick stick to put the reindeer. I don't know if you can see it down there. It's a little tiny picture of the reindeer. So they just cut around that. You can use prick stick to put that on the piece of paper for them to glue. But then for the pipe cleaners, you would need proper glue and some time to dry again, because yeah, possibly doing it with, again, as we were saying with the 5-year-old with the straws, you'll need a little bit of time to dry, 5 minutes or so. And then goggly eyes, which are always fun. They love goggly eyes. you've got loads of different sizes, colours, and the nose, which are pompons. They're they're also pretty easy to find. And you've got hundreds of colours. So if, again, you let them be creative, some of them are not going to want to put Rudolph's nose because they don't really care about Rudolph. They might want to put a blue nose or a pink nose, or use different colour antlers, or use a pink antler. I'd let them do their own thing, really, but that's my personal opinion. Oh, for the eyes, you could use both, but I prefer to use proper glue because there's less possibilities of them falling. I don't know if you've had any experience of things falling off your arts and crafts, but they don't normally like them and they get quite upset if things fall. But you can use Prick Stick if you want to. The thing that you really need glue for are the pipe cleaners. But if you wanted to use the Prick Stick for the eyes, that would be fine. I just think it's more secure. No eyes are falling off with the glue. And yeah, and here I would say that you can think flexibly. They don't have to be Christmas cards. I've made Christmas cards because for me it's easier, because it helps fast finishers and stuff like that, and they can do older ones, for example, with the reindeer. They could just write a message inside for their parents if you want them to practice a little bit of writing, or just write Happy Christmas. You know, it's not. But you can do other things with them. You could get them to cut it out. Once it's here, they can just cut it out and hang it. And you can make classroom decorations, or for a tree. I don't have a Christmas tree in my house, so I just had to use what there was. With the straws, for example, instead of doing it on a whole piece of paper, where's my straws? Sorry. Oh no, I haven't got the straws. Well, with the straws, instead of using a whole piece of paper, you just give them a strip of cardboard, for example, and rather than sticking the straws on a piece of paper, they just do it on one piece of cardboard, and you put something to hang them up at the end. It's exactly the same process. The two at the end, there's one that's yellow, that's round. We'll talk about later on, but that's for the 3-year-olds, and that's tearing paper. You don't. They just, well, we'll talk about it later on. But all they have to do is tear paper and glue it on a piece of transparent paper. That is. Am I talking too fast, or can you follow me? Oh, sorry, I've got into my own head a bit. Okay, marvelous, thank you. So this is kind of transparent paper. In Spanish, it's papel cebolla. I don't know what it is in, but it is paper. You can't tear it. It's not plastic. So tracing paper. Oh, thank you. So with this, for example, if you glue pieces of paper on, it looks really pretty when it goes against the light, because you can see the different pieces of paper that they've glued and stuff like that. And then you can hang those, and they can hang them on the window or wherever they want. And the green tree is much more complicated. That is for definitely older ages, and we'll talk about that later on, okay? Because that's different level. Yeah, so with all of these crafts, you can cut them out and do, if you don't want a Christmas card, you can do whatever you want with them, really. Hang them, create Christmas decorations, make them in big so that you've got one thing for the class, etc. Okay, 7-year-olds. 7-year-olds can do, and over, can do more or less whatever you want. They can write for they can do an entire story, they write neatly, they write on the lines, they can move their wrist while they're writing as well. They cut perfectly around more or less anything. They can draw, and they can fold paper quite precisely. Obviously, this skill gets better with age. So a 9-year-old would have no problem with folding paper in detail. Perhaps a 7-year-old might struggle a bit more with complicated things. So the one that I've chosen for this is on that one. Yeah, exactly. This is very simple. You shouldn't have a 7-year-old should be able to do this. It looks more complicated than it is. So this is the font. Instead of using white paper, I used blue paper. And this is a piece of white paper, of A4, but instead of, where is it? Sorry, I've got so many papers, it's quite difficult to find. Well, anyway, instead of folding it like this, which is what you do to create the Christmas card, you would fold it lengthwise. And that again gives you 2 parts, 1 for each student. So then there you just tell them to draw a kind of mountain shape. And all they have to do is fold it. The first one would have to be to the length of the card itself, and the rest they can fold however they want. They can make this longer or shorter, doesn't really matter. And once it's glued, again with prick stick, they can cut little trees, which is basically cutting a triangle into a green piece of paper, and glue them wherever they want. And draw whatever they want. I drew a snowman. I've seen them with people skiing or with children playing or whatever. And this is finger paint, but you can also use, like, they can use pens or some kind of felt tip. Like this is a silver pen, so you can also use any of that kind of material. Finger paint, I just think is fun, so I decided to go for that. And that's it, and the folding is quite simple. They just, as long as the first one is up to the size of the card, the rest is fine. Can we pass the slide? Thanks, Mandy. So, yeah, again, the materials, felt tips if they want to do some colouring or whatever, the blue paper for the background, green for the trees, and cleaning as well, obviously. And I believe that's about it now. Oh yes, can you allow for tidy up time? Since, well, all of my groups since day 1 have a tidy up routine. I think it's fundamental so that you don't spend ages cleaning chairs and putting away things. So if you teach them from the beginning that they need to tidy up, it will just make your life a lot easier at the end of the day. But just always remember that these crafts are about 15 to 20 minutes, so give yourself 5 minutes minimum to tidy up all the materials and get them to help you out. Yep, and the last slide that I'd like to talk about is adapting to age. So with this craft, for example, it's very similar to the reindeer, but it just means that you can make it as simple as you want. If you want, you can just cut that shape, give it to a 3-year-old, and he can do the stickers. There's no problem, they can do stickers. They won't be able to do the folding, or at least not that neatly. They will do something similar, but they can do stickers. With a 4-year-old, for example, you can get them to fold the tinsel properly. A 5-year-old can probably cut out the tree himself or herself, so that would be making it harder. Then with a 6-year-old, you could make them cut the tree so that it can hang. Anytime you cut the tree out of the whole thing and make it for a hangy thing, it's going to make it, well, increase difficulty. So you can just ask them to cut it, and that you can also use for a 6-year-old, or you can make it double so that a 7, 8-year-old can make it. So it's got 2 sides. So I think that's about it. I had one more slide, sorry, I'm going a bit over time. And these are a couple of extra activities. What ages do you think they could be? What do you think about the present one? The one with the present, what do you think could, is it finger paint? Which, the present? No, the present is paper. And maybe 4 or 5, okay? And the snowman? Okay, if they have to cut their head out, 4 or 5. The buttons? 3-year-olds, okay, 4. What about the Christmas tree? 7. And finally the Santa. Oh, unstable connection, it says. Super difficult, 20. Yeah, probably. But yeah, I guess it was for the Christmas tree. It is difficult, yeah. And the Santa Claus? 5 to 6. Well, the first one, the present, I've done for 3-year-olds. Tearing paper is a very good way to develop their hand-eye coordination, bilateral coordination, scissor skills, everything. It's a fantastic way. Obviously, that's mine. They're not going to produce that. They're just going to stick a couple of things on top of it. But it's very good to develop their fine motor skills in general. So I think tearing paper is a craft that you can do all year round, and it's super useful for them. But that's my 3-year-old craft. The snowman, I decided to do for the 5-year-olds. They won't produce a perfect circle, but it's good practice for them to actually be turning around the piece of paper at the same time as they're cutting. And always finger paint is fantastic and lovely for them. So, and for example, the scarf, they can colour in or draw. They don't have to cut it, or just cut a strip of paper, which is very easy for them, and stick it on. The buttons I've done for the 4-year-olds. And they can do the glue. Again, it's proper glue. It's glue, 1 drop, boop, stick it on. And the reason why I haven't chosen 3-year-olds is because doing a straight line for a 3-year-old is a very difficult task. So the 4-year-olds will get a better result. The Christmas tree, it is difficult. It is difficult. I would say 7 and over, because all you need really is to do a circle and divide it, fold it into different sections. So those are 8 sections, but you can divide them in 4. So it's just folding a circle in half and in half again. And the Santa Claus I've done with my 6-year-olds, and he goes up and down, and which is quite good fun for them. It's not working now. Goes up and down, up and down. So that's quite difficult for them because it has a lot of little bits that they have to cut around, and their hands, and which is quite a difficult task for a 5-year-old. Anyway, well, I'm done here. Have you got any questions? At all? Any questions about anything? We could go back or forth. And hello.
Okay. It has been a lovely webinar. I completely agree with Maria Carmen.
Oh, thank you.
I hope everybody else has enjoyed it too. If you do have any questions, you can type them. I agree. Ah, there's a question.
Yes, they are. This one is buttons.
The thread, is the thread drawn on, or is it actually a thread that they've stuck?
It's drawn, it's drawn.
It's drawn on, okay.
You can do it with proper thread, but that would make it harder.
Yeah. No, I love them. I can't decide which ones to try for next week now. I hope you've all managed to get some ideas to use with your classes next week as well. Julia, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed.
And just to remind you that registration's open for Oviedo for March. And we will have another webinar for you in the new year, yet to be confirmed, the date and who it's going to be. I have somebody lined up, but it's not 100% confirmed yet. So watch social media over the holidays and I will let you know who it's going to be. And thank you all very much. And just to say goodbye and have a lovely Christmas and New Year. Thank you, Julia. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Happy Christmas.